There is a little-known epidemic in America. And no, not one like the world went through a few years ago. This is an epidemic of assaults, sexual and physical, murder and cover-ups in the institutions where they are occurring, and at a staggering rate. Colleges have become the hunting ground for sexual predators, and as you'll see, murderers as well. Welcome to Bad Things, and today's video on the ongoing mystery of Kristin Smart's disappearance, or murder, the man accused of either, and a family that has covered for each other, albeit for all the wrong reasons, and what most likely happened to Kristin Smart. According to a study undertaken, over 11,580 sexual criminal offenses were reported on college campuses in 2021. Between 2015 and 2021, the total number of sexual offenses reported at higher education institutions increased by 23%. Surveys and experts indicate that the number of total offenses that occur on campuses is much higher due to underreporting. As of 2019, 13% of college students experienced non-consensual sexual contact by physical force or inability to consent. During the same year, the majority of students who were assaulted since enrolling said their perpetrators consumed alcohol before the incident. In 2021, nearly 13,000 students were victims of domestic violence, dating violence, or stalking incidents. Each year, more than 1 in 10 students are assaulted on their college campuses. These incidents can range from harassment and stalking to non-consensual touching and rape. The case of Kristin Smart goes one step further than these statistics. She disappeared off the face of the earth. Kristin Smart was wrapping up her freshman year at California Polytechnic University during Memorial Day weekend in 1996. She was excited to spend the summer with her family, and like most freshmen going home for the first time, she was most likely looking forward to home-cooked meals and the opportunity to do free laundry. But before leaving for home, she was going to a party. Kristen spoke with her mother at least twice a week, and on Friday, she called and left a message telling her mother that she had excellent news and was going to call her later. Kristen left her dorm room around 8:30 p.m. on May 25th and had been walking around campus with 3 female friends when a pickup truck driven by one of their friends passed by. They flagged him down, hopped in, and they spent approximately 2 hours driving around, chatting and laughing. Kristen told her friends that there was a birthday party that night at 135 Crandall Way, an unofficial fraternity home off campus, and asked if they wanted to go. No one else wanted to go to the party, so they dropped Kristen off at the house at 10:30 p.m. Nobody in the truck, including Kristen, had been drinking. 3 hours later, Kristen was discovered blacked out in an adjacent yard. No one who attended the party on May 25th has ever testified that they saw Kristen drinking, and everyone who was with her before the party has testified that she wasn't drinking either. Cal Poly students Cheryl Anderson and Tim Davis were leaving the party when they discovered Kristen lying in the grass outside. They woke her up, learned which dorm she lived in, and decided to walk her back home. Paul Flores, also known as Chester the Molester, due to the way he behaved around women, suddenly appeared out of nowhere and approached the 3 from the direction of the party, volunteering to go with them. Tim Davis, who had driven to the party but lived off campus, excused himself from the group and drove home. Cheryl Anderson, Paul Flores, and Kristen continued walking back to their dorms. Cheryl waved goodnight to Flores and Kristen as they neared her dorm rooms at Sierra Madre Hall. Kristin Smart has not been seen since then, except by Paul Flores. Kristin's roommate was out of town over the weekend, so her absence was not noticed until Sunday. Her roommate notified Kristin's parents and the university police department, but no formal missing person report was filled with San Luis Obispo police until a week later. The university police department was used to students disappearing on holiday weekends and reappearing the following week. They were certain Kristen was going to show up. The hunt for Kristin Smart only began 1 week after her disappearance. As per usual investigation procedure, the last person seen with a missing person is the first to be questioned. When questioned by investigators, Flores stated that he walked with Kristen until they reached his dorm, Santa Lucia Hall, and then left her to walk the short distance back to her dorm alone. One thing piqued the investigators' interest when interviewing Flores. He had a noticeable black eye. Flores told the university police department that he had been elbowed in the eye during a basketball game the Monday after the party, but Flores's friend told the district attorney that he had seen Flores on Sunday with the black eye, a day before the alleged basketball injury and a day after Kristen disappeared. Paul Flores has been the primary suspect in Kristen's disappearance since the investigation began, but as the police waited for more evidence, more witnesses, or Kristen's remains to be discovered, Flores stayed out of jail, not being charged or arrested for nearly 25 years. Kristen was declared legally dead in 2002, and the case, which had previously captured national attention, slipped into the background. During the Laci Patterson murder investigation, there were rumors in the media that Laci's husband, Scott Patterson, was involved in Kristen's disappearance because they both attended Cal Poly at the same time. There was a brief investigation into whether Peterson was involved in the disappearance, which Peterson denied, and he was later cleared as a suspect by authorities. Chris Lambert, a musician who grew up in the vicinity of Kristen's disappearance, was just 8 years old when Kristen vanished without a trace after the off-campus party. Lambert launched the Your Own Backyard podcast in 2019, which tackled the Kristin Smart case. Lambert didn't know Kristen or her family. He wasn't a journalist, hadn't filmed a documentary, and had little interest in real crime. However, his podcast on Kristen helped to open up a case that appeared to be unsolvable. Both the Smart family and the San Luis Obispo Police Department praised Your Own Backyard for playing a critical role in the case's remarkable developments. San Luis Obispo Sheriff Ian Parkinson would say, "What Chris did was take a local story and turn it into an international story. It did produce some information that I believe was valuable." Denise Smart, Kristen's mother, added, "We feel like the stars aligned when the podcast aired. It encouraged the previously reluctant to come forward. This obviously gave law enforcement new leads to follow and connect with what they already were holding close." Flores became painfully aware of how instrumental the Your Own Backyard podcast was. So instrumental that his mother worriedly discussed it with him in a phone call. A call that was being recorded by the San Luis Obispo Police Department. "The other thing I need you to do is to start listening to the podcast. I need you to listen to everything they say so we can punch holes in it. Wherever we can punch holes. Maybe we can't. You're the one that can tell me." Susan Flores, Paul Flores' mother, would say over the tapped line in January 2020. Flores was now squarely in the crosshairs of investigators. On January 29, 2020, the San Luis Obispo Police Department reported that 2 Flores-owned vehicles had been hauled in as evidence. On February 5th, search warrants seeking specific items of evidence were issued for 4 sites, including 2 in San Luis Obispo, 1 in Washington State, and a house in Los Angeles County. Flores was detained momentarily during the search. On April 22nd, a news outlet stated that a search warrant was issued for Flores' home in San Pedro, California. It stated that multiple items of interest were discovered during the search. Among the items discovered during the search were date-rape drugs and homemade movies of Flores sexually assaulting young women who were clearly under the influence of an incapacitating narcotic. Flores was not charged or jailed in connection with the discovered evidence. The Los Angeles Police Department then detained Flores on February 11, 2021, at Rancho Palos Verdes, California, on suspicion of being a felon in possession of a handgun. On March 15, 2021, a search warrant was issued for Ruben Flores, Paul's father's home, allowing the deployment of cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. This warrant was issued after a witness observed and photographed suspicious activities under and around Ruben Flores' rear deck in the middle of the night. Ruben Flores, Susan Flores, and her boyfriend, Mike McConville, were all present during this suspicious activity. Investigators using ground-penetrating radar discovered a soil disturbance beneath the deck. As they carefully removed the earth from the radar-marked spot, the investigators uncovered a discolored region that resembled a bathtub dirt ring. The forensic specialists on the scene knew what they were looking at. When a human body decomposes, it passes through several stages. Liquefaction is one of the final steps before just a skeleton remains. If a human corpse decomposes underground, the decomposition liquids drain into the surrounding soil and discolors it, causing an area of discoloration that was identical to the discolored and disturbed earth found beneath Ruben Flores' deck. A forensic serologist, an expert in the detection, identification, classification, and study of various bodily fluids such as blood, sperm, saliva, and urine, and their relationship to a crime scene, found 4 samples that tested positive for human blood located in the deeper soil. Samples were taken from the soil and sent for analysis. Unfortunately, after 25 years, the DNA in the samples had deteriorated too much to compare to Kristen's DNA. On April 13, 2021, Flores and his father Ruben were arrested and detained on suspicion of Kristen's disappearance. Flores was accused of murder, while Ruben Flores was charged with being an accessory. On October 18, 2022, Paul and his father's cases were heard separately but concurrently at the Monterey County Courthouse. Paul Flores was found guilty of first-degree murder. Ruben was not convicted of the accessory after the fact charge. Paul Flores was sentenced to 25 years to life on March 10, 2023. One question remains: where is Kristen's body, and what most likely happened to her and her body? Although there is no concrete evidence, a lot of fingers have been pointed at Flores' mother, Susan. There seems to be no doubt that Paul Flores assaulted and killed Kristen after walking her back to her dorm. Flores was the last person to see Kristen, and evidenced by his black eye, he had been in some type of altercation the weekend she went missing. Flores would have called his family in a panic and told them what he had done, and in all likelihood the Flores family banded together to hide Kristen's body at Ruben Flores' home. In the fall of 1996, Mary Lassiter was looking for a house to rent in Arroyo Grande, California. She came upon a rental ad in the local newspaper placed by a woman called Susan Flores. Mary and her family moved into the house in October 1996. According to the Lassiters, weird postcards began to arrive in their mailbox shortly thereafter. They were intended for Susan Flores, asking her to assist authorities and ask her son to come forward or confess to what he did to Kristen. 20 years later, Chris Lambert tracked down Mary Lassiter and interviewed her. She told him that shortly after moving in, she was cleaning her car in the driveway and found an earring near the left front tire. The earring was handed over to the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Office, but detectives will never know whether it belonged to Kristen because they lost the vital evidence. Lassiter told Lambert that the earring she discovered matched the necklace Kristen was wearing on one of the missing Cal Poly student billboards. But maybe Mary Lassiter's most terrifying story was about being woken up early in the morning by a beeping sound emanating from her garden. She told Chris Lambert, "In the master bedroom, I'm hearing this beep beep every night at 4:20 or 4:20 in the morning. It sounded like a digital watch alarm, but Lassiter couldn't find any watches in the garden. The backyard was all concrete, except for a few sections where planting boxes had been built by cutting out the concrete and filling them with dirt. Lambert passed on this revelation to Kristen's mother, Denise. Denise was shocked. Denise then told Lambert that her daughter had been working as a lifeguard at the university's recreation facility, and Kristen's watch alarm would go off every morning to ensure she arrived at the pool by 5 a.m. The most damning allegation, though, is still the eyewitness that saw Ruben Flores, Susan Flores, and her boyfriend, Mike McConville, digging in Ruben's yard in the middle of the night. To date, Kristen's body has not been found. So where could it be? With the heat on the family, moving a body more than once would have put them at risk of being caught. It's safe to say that the last time they moved the body, they made sure that they would never have to do it again. Logic has it that when they buried Kristen's body the first time, it was a rush job, with very little thought or planning going into the ghastly deed. But they made sure the body or any trace of it would be found the second time around. Kristen's skeletal remains would have been much easier to get rid of than a full corpse, and these remains were most likely destroyed or discarded in different areas to make it impossible to identify. Should investigators reopen the case and have a close look at Susan, Ruben, and Mike McConville for the removal and destruction of Kristen's body? Leave us a comment and tell us what you think. Paul Flores is currently serving his term at the Pleasant Valley State Prison. On August 23, 2023, Flores was attacked by his cellmate, Jason Budrow, who is serving a life sentence for killing his girlfriend. Budrow had previously killed another cellmate, Roger Reese Kibbe, a serial killer and rapist known as the I-5 Strangler, in 2021. If you love our content and want to support the channel, feel free to check our web shop where you can find exclusive true crime merch brought to you by Bad Things.